I'm Felina.
And I'm Summer.
And you are listening to Broken Broken.
Because we're both.
The podcast about living your best life by getting real.
Hey, broken people. This is Summer.
And this is Felina.
And today we have Angelina Steinmeyer. Mm-hmm. Please tell me I said your name right.
You did.
Okay. And how old are you?
I'm 15 years. I'm turning 16 in a month. Less than. I'm like 2 weeks. So
awesome.
I'm 16.
Basically.
Excited?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. So, what's your current title, Miss?
I am Junior Miss Indian Oklahoma.
So she's a princess, and a bona fide princess. I love it seeing her in her crown.
That's awesome. We're going to have to get a picture of that for the cover because I would like to see that.
For sure.
So how did you get interested in that?
Okay, so in 2017, my cousin was murdered in Lawton, and so I started working with MMIW, and I decided that, hey, I should put this out there and let more people know. So I decided to run for my first pageant over the whole state of Oklahoma. So now I represent all 39 tribes of the state of Oklahoma.
Wow.
So that was your first pageant?
It was.
You went big.
I went big.
Gate.
Get big or go home. I like it.
Wow.
I like it.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
MMIW is Missing Murdered Indigenous Women, for the listeners that aren't aware. Do you want to kind of give a little about what that is? Or?
So I guess I work with mostly Southwestern chapter, I guess you could say. They're a group that focuses on people that have been murdered or were kidnapped in the southwestern region of Oklahoma. As far as missing and murdered Indigenous women goes, they cover a few specific cases. Mm-hmm. So as far as my cousin goes, and I think there are 3 more that they focus on getting recognition of in Lawton, mainly around the Comanche Nation area. So I mainly work with them as far as that goes, just because that's where I'm from. Mm-hmm. So I really focus on recognition and letting people know about my aunt's case, because it's not widely spread, and telling people the facts and not just, hey, this is a problem. More like every 4 out of 5 women will be sexually assaulted in their life. Mm-hmm. Because that's messed up.
It is.
In reality. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Angie and I both spoke at that. We did one of the sessions, the breakout sessions at the Women's March this year, or this past year. I don't even remember the date. I don't know what month it is now. But the last one. And she spoke the other day at the climate thingy. What is it again?
The climate strike. It was technically, I think it's the Youth Climate Strike Summit. I think that's the full title. It was in Oklahoma City at the Capitol building, and I spoke there on how Indigenous lives are affected by climate change. I spoke about California nations and how they are affected because of the oceanic warming, because it kills their red abalone mainly, and that's their ceremonial food source. It's where they get their regalia from. All of their stories come from this abalone. So I focused on telling people about that instead of the rest of the country and how it affects suburban areas.
So if they lose the red abalone, that's a huge part of their culture.
It's
gone.
Absolutely huge.
What will it mean?
It's their culture. It's their stories. I told a story about Abalone Woman, and it's a domestic violence awareness. So I was able to bring my platform into that also. So it's about Northman hurting Abalone Woman and her tears becoming the abalone shells. So it's about respecting your gifts and how Abalone Woman shouldn't have let him treat her in that way because he didn't respect her gift. Men should respect women, and women should respect their own gifts. And that's the story. That's what it tells. So I focused on that aspect because that's where all of our stories come from, is our creation stories. So without those, we wouldn't have morals, we wouldn't have ideas, we wouldn't have rules.
That's where your culture comes from.
Mm-hmm.
That's really amazing. I can't believe that you are only 15.
Thank
I
you.
know that you're almost 16, but wow.
Thank
That's
you.
impressive. Yeah. I'm very impressed by this girl right here, right now.
She's amazing.
I know.
She gave we were at Matriarch here a couple weeks ago, and she actually did her story for us before the climate summit. And I am not a very emotional person. It takes a lot to get me worked up, but she did. I was getting all emotional over there. I made her a pair of earrings while she was talking because it was really touching. And she is a very impressive young woman.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you live right now?
I live in Norman.
Oh, okay. So you live here. I do too. Where do you go to school?
I'm homeschooled through Epic.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about Epic.
So Epic is an online charter school. It's just like public school. You still have to do your school. You have to meet with your teacher. We meet once a week for study hall. You have to have your shot. So it's online public school.
Sure.
I like that specifically because I'm able to interact with people more than just being an individual with my brother and I. It's easier to talk to people about needing help because if my mom doesn't know, then I'm stuck. So I like this a lot better just because I get to interact with more people.
Yeah. That's a totally different experience than I think any of us probably ever had.
Right.
I mean,
a couple of my kids are in Epic. And
are
it's
they?
Pretty interesting.
Okay.
Yes, my 2 juvenile delinquents are in Epic because they got in trouble at school. We've talked about this. I had one who actually, he had a vape at school. It wasn't his, but, everybody who touched it got in trouble. But in the town that we lived in at that time, it was an automatic court referral.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm like, court involvement over this is ridiculous. So I pulled him out of school. And now he doesn't want to go back to regular school so that he can work and have a more flexible schedule. So, and then my 13-year-old had to go to Epic because she got suspended from school. Because, again, in that same town, her little friend brought one of those little bottles of wine to school. And they shared it between, like, the whole choir, And so each one got, like, 2 sips. And it's automatic, like, 45 days suspension. So she got suspended for the rest of school. But since she's special ed, it doesn't really work to just send home packets of work for her to do. So I put her in Epic so she would have a special ed accommodations. So she has a special ed teacher who comes over once a week and works with her. And, like, her speech therapist will do like Google Hangouts, so they'll video chat so they can work on her speech and things.
Wow. I know that this isn't necessarily the topic of the conversation, but I'm like learning about this for the first time, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so while I'm not necessarily a fan of the whole quote school choice,
Epic
given the lack of options, it has been a lifesaver
a pretty decent
for us.
option.
Yes.
And you like it?
I do. My teacher is actually letting me do 2 school years within the next year, so I plan on graduating around fall of 2020.
Chata wanted to do that, but they wouldn't let him do it.
Well, you must be smart.
Oh, I like to say that I am.
That's okay. You should be confident in your
it's
abilities.
good.
If you know that you are smart, then that's okay to say so.
I'm pretty smart. I worked in a bone lab.
You did what?
She's got what's going on.
You worked in a what?
I worked in an osteology lab for a summer.
Really? That sounds fascinating. What did you do in there?
So we worked with Wichita skeletons. They were around 1,500 years old. Mm-hmm. We aged them, sexed them. Sometimes we could determine how they died, when they died.
Have you ever watched the show Bones? This is what I'm seeing in my head.
Oh, yeah. I was just like Dr. Brennan. But yeah, so we worked with a few. We worked with some kids and we worked with some adults, and actually my favorite was 035. She came from the Wichita Mountain area. We were convinced it was a male skeleton just because the pelvis was so small and the muscle attachments were huge. They were giant. Oh, really? But Dr. Snow had determined that she was a female, but it was just crazy because of how huge the skeleton was. What did we say? She was going to be around 6 foot tall, around 7 foot tall.
Yeah. Wow.
All the parts required were like broken and like turned to dust, and it was bad. But
That was a fun skeleton.
Can you introduce the voice from
the
afar that we've heard?
That's my brother Killian.
Hi, Killian. Thank you for joining us.
But yeah, so I've worked a few different fun things like that I like to.
That requires some intellect.
Oh yeah, I would say so.
So you're interested in doing something like that in the future?
Absolutely. For a while, as far as we're still concerned, my plan is to either become a professor in biological anthropology, because my mentor.
I didn't even know what biological anthropology was at 16. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, me neither.
My mentor, Leslie Rankin-Hill, she kind of inspired me in such an incredible way. She was amazing. We think she moved to Florida?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, she still lives here then. But she plans on moving to Florida, and she kick-started me, and she let me work in the bone lab, and it was a really fun experience. So that's kind of what I want to do in the future, is be like her. So
That's
fun.
awesome.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned a moment ago that you have a platform.
Mm-hmm.
What is your platform?
My platform is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. It's honoring and bringing awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous women.
So if I am someone that knows nothing about that, what do you tell me?
Well, I guess I explain some statistics, and so I'd start with Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women it's not a group, but it's kind of, I guess the only way to explain it is as a platform for bringing awareness to these cases. There are over 5,000 missing persons cases in the U.S. and Canada alone, just for Indigenous women. So that's kind of where it all started, is in Canada. Some backstory, I guess. It's just been going on for the last few years, since around 1980. I think people actually started paying attention to the decreasing numbers of Indigenous women in that area. And with Canada, there's always been sterilization cases and
Really?
things like that.
Yeah, forced sterilization of Native women.
Absolutely.
Really? I don't know any of this. Through our podcast series, I've learned a lot more about Native culture than I knew before because of Summer and some of the people that she's brought on as guests. So
Yeah. But yeah, so it all kind of started in Canada and then spread out from there. I really pay attention to, like I said, the statistics and letting people know that this is an actual issue. It's not just something that people should ignore, because these are human beings with names and families and dreams that will never get fulfilled because they're somewhere. No one knows where. They could have a different identity at this point because they're too scared to come back because they're worried it'll happen again. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking.
yeah, and nobody really seems to be aware that this is an epidemic.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I come in. That's
Part
my
of your
job.
platform.
Yeah.
To bring awareness to this issue.
Yeah, and I hope that I'm doing that, because I have been putting a lot of effort. It's something I'm absolutely passionate about. And like I said, I hope that I'm succeeding in letting people know that it's an actual issue.
By making it something that people talk about, even if I'm the only person, which I won't be, but even if I was the only person who was like, oh, I didn't know that was an issue, and now I do, that is succeeding.
Yeah.
You know? So where all have you had the opportunity to have appearances for with your crown?
So I've worked a lot with, like I said, Southwestern MMIW. I've gone to a few of their powwows where I make an appearance, and I speak on behalf of my aunt and my family there. I've worked with Gamma Delta Pi during their Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Remembrance Week. I've worked with my tribe,
And what is your tribe?
I'm Comanche.
Okay.
So, like I said, I grew up in Lawton, so right around that area is where I tend to focus on. My miss is Muskogee Creek, so she kind of covers the top half of the state, and I kind of cover the bottom half of the state. So we're pretty central. I've spoken in Oklahoma City. Technically, I spoke in Newkirk when I was there for the pageant, and Tulsa area. So pretty much, I kind of vary.
Yeah.
It's been all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the state.
Oh, yes. So here in town, the Native Alliance Against Violence, I've worked with them a lot. They are not only MMIW, but it's violence against women. It's the whole VAWA Act. So they focus on being a resource and they work with, what do they have, like 5 different offices with different nations.
Oh, they work with different tribes.
So they have different shelters, and they have different clothing. What is the technical term?
Clothing banks?
Yeah, like with my tribe, we have a women's shelter and a children's shelter. So they kind of work with those areas to help get funding for them. But yeah, so I work with them a whole lot because it's my platform, and I've done a few photo shoots to bring awareness to these things on more social media level. So those have gone around. It's pretty neat.
That's really impressive. I'm trying to think about what I was doing at 15. It wasn't anything as productive or meaningful. So I'm just like sitting here in awe and impressed by you. So
Thank you.
yeah, I know. I need my daughter to come home. She's almost 10, and I want her to just emulate you. That would be great. Yeah. You're a pretty impressive 15-year-old.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know I lost my train of thought, guys.
It's been a long day for Summer and I.
Yes.
It's been a long life. We're
Oh
tired.
my God, I'm so tired. Well, I spent the whole weekend running around, and so I had no rest. So, like Felita said, most of us are not doing as all these good productive things at your age. I'm glad you
No.
are. So what do you think is one of the most pressing issues for kids your age? Because it's been a minute since either one of us have been 16.
Let's not talk about how old we are.
We're
Summer.
not, but it's been at least 5 years. And so what do you think is it? Because I know times change fast, technology changes fast. So what do you think you and your peers, what's the top issues on your mind?
So I try and bring awareness to my platform in all levels. But when it comes to kids my age, it's going to be less sex trafficking and more on the depression side, because kids my age tend to feel alone. And it's an absolutely real thing. I have several friends that have needed to go to mental institutions for a short amount of time because of attempted suicides, and that's absolutely horrible. It's sad that they feel that this is their only escape. So I'd say if my platform wasn't MMIW, it'd probably lean more on the LGBT spectrum, as far as kids who feel depressed because they can't be themselves, or kids who feel depressed because they're trying to be themselves and people won't let them.
Right.
I have trans friends, and I have non-binary friends, and I have friends that identify as lesbian, gay, bi, trans. I have friends of all different types of minorities, and I think that's where I would lead to, is gender expression and things like that.
That's great.
So when we were your age, those words like non-binary and all of these things weren't even...
Well, it's not even a phrase.
Right. Like we
I
didn't
think
know
we
what
knew
this
lesbian
was.
and gay, and that was probably
Right.
about it.
And there was a lot of, like you talked about the mental health. It was, you didn't talk about it, right? And even if you tried, people would shut you down.
It's still,
So
you
do you
don't talk
feel
about
like
it.
it's changing even a little bit? Like, can you give me some hope here?
I would say for people my age, there's definitely an outlet, because I know my friends can talk to me, and I know I can talk to my friends. But people feel that they cannot talk to their parents or their grandparents because these words didn't exist.
Because we still have that generation gap.
Absolutely. So I have a friend who is transgender, and their mom will not let them go on hormones because they don't agree with it, because they're a very strict Christian family. And so it's just sad, not only on the aspect that their family doesn't understand them, it's that they're not willing to understand them.
Sorry, I've got a 9-year-old friend who are
He just came
reading
home.
into the scene. We are recording a podcast right now. Hi, girls. Do you want to? You're welcome to hang out in here, but we have to be kind of quiet. And that is the life of a single mom who does 18 things
Right.
at once all the time.
Yep.
So.
That's all right.
But anyway, I think the only words I knew whenever I was your age were, I knew what it was to be lesbian or gay. I didn't know anything else. I hadn't been exposed to anything else. I grew up in a very small town.
Same.
But, I was gifted with the ability to be completely non-judgmental, which I still have, which is great. But, obviously not everybody has that.
Right.
Absolutely.
I still have to explain this stuff to my parents.
Right, yeah.
My dad has at
quit
least
trying.
got to where he'll at least come ask me when he hears new phrases or new terms that he doesn't know, and he'll come ask me. He's like, "Okay, so what does this mean?"
That's so good. That's so
I'm
good.
like, okay,
That's just,
getting a little bit better. We're making progress because I'm a preacher's kid. Very, he was very apostolic. So he's not all the way there yet, but he's like, "Well, you can bring your friend over."
Even that's good.
We just won't talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's progress, but wow.
Incremental.
Yes.
I'm curious about your generation. Kids who are already, I think it's kind of great actually that kids can be 14, 15 years old and have understood this about themselves. And I'm sure that that's not anything new. I'm sure whenever we were that age that kids already knew this about themselves. But even the fact that maybe it is just you as a friend that they can feel open enough to, or safe enough to open up to, I think that is progress.
Absolutely.
So you've had friends come to you and open up to you about their sexual orientation before?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've had people that have told me before before their parents, as far as should I do this? Should I tell my parents? Am I going to get in trouble?
Right.
Is this a bad idea? Should I just wait? Should I try and change my mind? It's kind of sad that they have to feel that way. Mm-hmm. They feel that their parents won't accept them. Because if your parents don't accept you, then, you just feel below nothing. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, not even my worst enemy, that their parents didn't accept them for who they were. So I have had people come out to me in terms of advice, because they know. And I tell people as soon as I meet them, hey, if you have any issues, just message me and we can talk about it. Because that's the kind of person I've always been. I always plan to be that way.
Stay that way. That's a good thing.
The world needs more people that way.
Absolutely. I was always like that too. And it's really hard when you encounter people who aren't. Because I think that we all kind of project an image of ourselves on others, whether we're aware of it or not. And if you're a good person and you're accepting of other people, and then you assume other people will be accepting of you, and they just aren't always. And that can be a harsh reality.
Oh, absolutely.
Even I'm 37 and you're 15. And at 37, it's still a harsh reality sometimes. So, but don't ever let it change you.
I'll try.
Good.
I did see that I shared an article today. I saw that Colorado is now put forward a bill to ban conversion therapy.
That's great, considering that in Colorado Springs they had what was it, the Family First initiative, where they were spearheading that.
Right.
So that's wonderful.
So all of our listeners in Colorado, call your representatives and get that pushed forward. Because Oklahoma will not do that.
We're in the Bible Belt.
Trying. Right.
Well,
we've been trying.
Suck.
But, yeah.
Summer,
I know.
Yes. I think everyone's aware how much we suck.
I still have to complain about it a lot. Yeah, but let's hope that, because conversion therapy, I've talked to several survivors of conversion therapy, and it is horrific and traumatic.
Do you know anybody who has been through that or been threatened with that? Or
I do know people that have been threatened with that. It's kind of been more of a personal conversion therapy. I'm going to try and change myself, or my parents are trying to change me. They're not going to tell anyone else that they're this way, and they're going to pretend to be inclusive and all these great, wonderful things. But in reality, when they get home, they get cussed out because they asked someone to call them she in public.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Breaks my heart.
Just because they're trying to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating. I mean, why can't we all just be more accepting? But that's what this whole podcast...
Because humans are awful.
I know.
The planet should just... eliminate us. It'll be better off.
I mean, is it easier to judge? Like, is that the thing? Like, does it take less effort? I don't get it. Like, does it take less effort to just... not fight against the grain? Is that what it is? That it takes more effort to fight it? Because I don't feel like judgment comes naturally. I know it's something that's usually taught. But it also takes a lot, in my opinion, it seems to take a lot of effort to project.
It does.
I
feel like a lot of it is because it always seems to be, a lot of times it's from religious perspectives, but it's always the ones who believe we are right and everybody else is wrong. And so when other
that
people...
requires judgment.
Yes. But then when other people... they feel that's threatening because you're wrong. And so then, like, if it's their kid, well, then
they're threatened.
My kid is wrong. That reflects on me as a parent. And it's
so their own reality is being threatened.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I guess I can see that.
Because they don't have the ability to just process
I have these perpetual, scales inside my head where, I never really have my mind made up about anything. Because I'm just like, well... the jury's still out. There's always more information that you could take in. I'm very open. I guess that's the definition of open-minded.
I suppose.
But some people, they just are like, oh, well, this side of the scale is broken and this is how it is. And I guess I don't know. I guess that maybe sounds judgmental coming from you saying that, but I don't feel like that's a good way to be.
I'm judging you people.
I'm judging you for being judgmental.
Judgmental people.
Yes.
I don't know. I just kind of feel like even if you don't agree with something, if somebody else, whatever it is they're doing,
what?
If they're not hurting other people, why do you care?
Right? Yeah. If it doesn't affect you, then what do you care?
I don't know.
I don't know. What do you deal with judgment? Do you stand up for? I mean, I haven't asked you what if you have a non-traditional sexual orientation, but whether you do or not, do you feel the urge to stand up for your friends who are transgender or identify as a minority?
Oh, absolutely. I had an argument in my car with my aunt over bisexual people because her boyfriend used to be bisexual, but he didn't tell her, so he lied, and he was cheating on her the whole time
with a man
because he's bisexual. And it's just people don't just do that. You're not, just because you
it's very confusing,
can like two separate genders doesn't mean you're going to always be dating two separate people.
I think that's a common misconception because I see that a lot, that people make that assumption.
Well, okay, so I read tarot cards and it talks a lot about how there are masculine and feminine characteristics, and we all have both of them. And, we identify men as having more of the masculine characteristics and women having more of the feminine characteristics. But in reality, we all have both, and there's no, just because your genitalia was born a certain way is what you're identified as. But our active characteristics, things that make us who we are, maybe you have female genitalia but have more masculine characteristics or vice versa, and that is more... I actually think it's really just such a wonderfully enlightening and beautiful self-reflective thing to be in tune with yourself enough to identify that. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean?
And with Native Americans, I don't want to say we because that sounds terrible, but Native Americans have this thing called two-spirited. And that's whenever you feel as if you are either both or the scale just tips. It's like gender fluid or gender flux in that case. These are all new words. So it's being in tune with both sides of your spirit.
Yeah, I've heard two-spirit.
Right. Two-spirit came from the Anishinaabe teaching. They have a sacred teaching that some of their medicine people are considered two-spirit, meaning they have both spirits in their body, masculine and feminine. So they had, I don't know enough to say concrete that they only had 3 genders, but they did recognize that as a specific gender, specific designation, and they have particular spiritual duties and things like that. And
they hold it in like a higher regard as like being a special identity.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, every culture had different ideas on that. There's, what is it? One of the Southwest tribes have like 5 genders or something that they spell out. So yeah, it's much more open. Most of our cultures tend to be much more open about, like, we have a gender binary. Choctaw have a gender binary and we use words that roughly translate to the English word of men and women, but they don't really have anything to do with your genitalia or any of that. They were just, we have life givers and life takers, and so it's really what the role you play in the community,
right?
And it's very complicated because, like I said, our words translating to English words, and then they start imposing the definitions on us. I'm like, that's not how that works. So yeah, like most of our cultures were much more open. So all of that came with the religious colonization that was forced on us.
Absolutely.
That did away with some of that and kind of suppressed some of that.
Oh yeah, like in my tribe, our current elected officials are fully colonized. I mean, fully assimilated and very heavily Christianized, and they have started. The tribe self-publishes history books about our culture and things, and they've gone as far as to blatantly lie about things. They quote Swanson's early ethnographies, but they use one word out of his quote in order to say that we held gay people in contempt, which is not at all what he said. If you ever look at the original text, but they've gone as far as to, like I said, completely fabricate things in order to wrap this. And they recently declared us a, quote, Christian nation without any consultation of the people, which is, blatantly disrespectful to all of our traditional people. So yeah, colonization is ongoing and coming from within now. So
Kind of crazy.
Oh, that is really creepy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's disturbing.
it is.
Wow. Religion is such a, I mean, not to get off on a tangent, because I will. But,
That's what we do.
yeah, no, I go off on tangents about lots of things, but religion and religious dogma, just really telling people how they should think. It's not.
Yeah,
Not
and
my thing.
it's especially when I feel like, okay, even if you think things are one way, when you can see that you're harming people, because like we've talked about, like the self-harm and we're putting people through traumatic conversion therapies and all of this, and we're causing mental health struggles for people because of
Especially
the
young
judgments
people.
on them.
Yes, especially young
when
people.
you see that that's the result, why do you keep doing it? Like, you're at this point, it's just cruel. Like, we can see that this is what we're doing to people, and we keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Well, I think it all kind of boils down to this, like, judgment. Just thinking that you know better than someone else. Thinking that you are, I don't know, the wisest people know that they know nothing at all. And you seem very wise for 15 years old.
Thank you.
You don't seem like a know-it-all by any means. Although your mom was making a face.
I don't like to say I'm a know-it-all, but I like to say that I inform myself before I try and speak on different topics. Because I'm not going to go into something unprepared. I'm not going to go, well, you shouldn't do this because, and then not have a counter argument when they come at me with, but science says. So it's just, I try and keep myself informed so I can always get back at them. Because
Are you in debate? Because you should be. I'm a lawyer.
I want to be in debate.
If you're not. But this, you girl, you need to be into some debate. Yeah. I'm just saying.
Pretty good
I look
argument.
forward to seeing all the work you're going to do.
I know.
You're doing amazing
I
things
know.
already.
I mean, 15 years old.
Right.
Holy crap.
That's what we keep saying in Matriarch, because most of us did not start doing social justice work until we're 30.
Right.
And so now we're seeing all these 15-year-olds coming and doing it. We're like, this is great. Cut that learning curve. Get these kids doing this at 15 because,
you have the time. You don't have the, you know, like society hasn't quite beat up on you as much.
You're not as jaded as we are.
Yes, exactly. Like it's really kind of perfect and beautiful. And I remember feeling as passionate about social justice and not really knowing what to do with that passion at your age. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really great that you've got an outlet.
It seems that way, that it would be super easy for us to be able to be in tune with ourselves, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot standing up to older people. Older people that will stare you in the face and go, you're wrong, because they're grown and you have to listen to them because they're your elders. Mm-hmm. It's hard going against the rest of society when it seems like they're just stabbing you in the back trying to get you to sit back down.
Well, that's being a woman.
Yeah.
That's being a woman,
You're doing a
too.
beautiful job.
And being able to learn how to stand up for yourself now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm 37 and I still struggle with men talking to me like that and putting me in my place like that. And making it difficult for me to stand up for myself at this age. So it's really great that you're learning how to do it and practicing it now.
Yeah. There's a lot of lateral violence between adults and between kids. Mm-hmm. And I've had children that were my age look me in the face and go, what are you doing? You could be doing this. You could be doing something else with your life. But no, you're sitting at the Capitol making a human rights speech. So I don't understand what their argument is for that, because that's wrong in some way. I don't know in which way. Mm-hmm. But you should be sitting in a classroom right now, not standing up for yourself and your culture and the rest of society, because no one else will.
Yeah,
that's
there will always
amazing.
be people trying to silence you.
Don't listen to any of them. Don't ever listen to the voices. Listen to yourself. You're doing a great job, and I have no doubt that you're not going to let that stuff get to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, okay, so do you have any appearances or anything coming up? Any events coming up?
So I'm going to 2 powwows this weekend. Those I'll be making an appearance. Like I said, I speak on my platform wherever I go. So anytime I talk to someone, I tell them my platform and I introduce myself. So everywhere I go, I meet new people, and I always tell them about what I'm doing in the community. So I like to say that every appearance represents my platform. I don't think I have any speaking arrangements coming up immediately.
Do you have a website or social media or somewhere where people can look to find more information about you?
I do have a Facebook, and I share a lot of stuff on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women on there. It's not public, just because I am 16 years old.
Right.
But I do try and help people when they have questions. You guys can always go to ofiw.org and email our pageant directors, and they'll get in contact with us, so we could potentially get in contact with you.
What was that again?
ofiw.org.
ofiw.org. Okay.
It's the Oklahoma Federation of Indian Women. That's the organization in which I represent.
Okay.
Are you going to be at the symposium on the American Indian April 10th?
Yes, I believe my senior and I, as well as the Miss and Junior Miss Muskogee Creek Nation Princesses, will be there, and we're doing a performance there.
Oh, exciting. I'll get to see you because I'm going to be on the keynote panel.
Oh, cool.
So that'll be fun.
You can contact the podcast at brokebrokenpodcast@gmail.com. The Broken Podcast can be found on Twitter @BrokeBrokenShow, on Instagram and Facebook @BrokeBrokenPodcast.